Ladies and gentlemen, our last speaker of the day, but very far from the least, is our host, another of our hosts from this region. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to give her an enormous round of applause, not only to welcome her to the stage, but to say thank you to Yorkshire for hosting us again in this wonderful conference. Ladies and gentlemen, Jane Collins.
Sorry, I'm not quite as tall as Jill. Good afternoon, conference. As your final speaker, I'm going to make sure that I don't go on for too long, so we can all get back in front of the TV and watch England thrash Wales in the Rugby World Cup. So I hope you've enjoyed the conference, and good night. Well, as employment spokeswoman for UKIP, I have the important job of ensuring that in the referendum campaign, the message about jobs and growth thriving outside the EU is understood by every single voter. It's the decision which will be at the heart of people's minds whether to support Britain leaving the EU or not. And make no mistake, the inside will trot out the usual lines about 3 million jobs being at risk if we leave the stranglehold of Brussels. As if having our own World Trade Organization agreement and deciding our own employment rules would be detrimental. People will vote according to the number of pounds in their pockets. And it's thanks to UKIP that these are actual pounds and not euros. The only jobs at risk from the British exit from the European Union are MEPs, commissioners and big business lobbyists. And my colleagues and I would be delighted if we were the turkeys voting for Christmas. So that is why we must champion the huge growth potential of the United Kingdom, so we can trade with the world unfettered by the European Commission. That is why we must ensure people know that it's the EU red tape that costs businesses money and stops job creation and wage rises. And that is why we must explain that it is uncontrolled migration caused by the EU open borders that leads to wage compression around the country. As soon as the referendum was on the table, something again I will point out that was brought about because of pressure put on by UKIP, and all you delegates here in this room, you've achieved that as well. We had voices from big business screaming out how important the EU was. Well, of course it's important for them. Of course it is. That's how they get their cheap labour. It's how they get and keep competitors out of the market by flooding Brussels with their lobbyists. Take Sir Mike Rake, President of the CBI and the former Deputy Chairman of Barclays plc. In 2009, when Sir Mike was in situ, Barclays relocated some of their IT team to Lithuania, where instead of paying their staff the £20,000 which they paid them in the UK, it meant that they could pay them less than half that money. So when you hear the CBI, probably on their prime slot on the BBC, talking about how we need the EU for jobs, remember they're talking about their jobs and the ones they are exporting thanks to EU rules. In contrast, the Federation of Small Businesses, the companies that are the actual backbone of the British economy, released a survey showing results that small businesses are starting to realise the negative effects of the EU on their companies. But there's a lot of work to be done, because what it also showed was that there are a large number of people who still think that because they're involved in exporting goods to the EU, they need to be part of a political union to do this. You don't. That is rubbish. Now, to debunk this most frequently used scare tactic, we only need to refer to the co-author of the 3 Million Jobs research, Professor Ian Begg. He said the claims were a false perspective. The scaremongers who would have it that we should, if we leave the political union, that we will lose our business from the 27 other members of state who remain in the EU, they're saying that what will happen is they will no longer buy British goods. Again, it is all scare tactics, as if there would be no need for the financial services based in the City of London, or there would be no need of our mineral extracts, and there would be no need of the pharmaceutical goods that we currently export to the EU en masse to the countries in the EU. In fact, we have a whole variety of examples where our membership of the EU has cost us jobs and obviously cost us money. Here in the Yorkshire and North Lincolnshire region, we have had the closure of both Eggborough Power Station and Ferry Bridge Power Station, totalling over 400 job losses as a direct consequence of the drive to meet EU emission targets. Tata Steel blamed cripplingly high electricity costs, pushed up by the green taxes to meet EU targets. They blamed that for the loss of their 720 jobs, and that was mainly in the Rotherham area. And Young's in Grimsby announced redundancies after it lost out on a lucrative contract to Sainsbury's, to a company who had much lower running costs thanks to a fish processing plant based in Poland. Now, in complete contrast, the chairman of Vauxhall, who employs 35,000 people, operates 2 plants, said it would be unthinkable that the rest of the EU would shun a trade deal in the case of Brexit, and said the company would continue its operations as usual. The chief executive of Hitachi Rail, Alistair Dormer, who recently opened a factory in the North East, where investment by the government is only £5 and a penny compared to London, where it is over £2,500 per person in London, said that links with our #1 trading partner does not necessarily depend on the UK remaining in the EU. Speaking at the opening of another plant, he said, "Whatever the British public decides, what's important is we continue our close trade links, whether we're in the EU or whether we're out of the EU." He added, quite poignantly at the end, "You don't build a factory like this unless you're here for the long haul." And even the HSBC chief executive admitted last week that Brexit would make no difference to the bank's plans. As my colleagues have spoken about over the last 2 days, when it comes to every area of our life, our country, be it agriculture, business, trade or energy, all these policies, the EU still holds the key. Employment is at the very heart of our campaign to regain independence for Britain and to win this referendum. And to do so, we must tackle the scare stories. So what we need to do, we need to concentrate on spreading the message that outside the EU, the UK economy will thrive, it will flourish. This referendum is there for us to win. It's our referendum. We will win this. And with a strong, positive message about the benefits of a free, independent Britain, thriving in the global market, ladies and gentlemen, we will win. Well, thank you very much for listening to me. I told you I was going to keep it short and sweet because obviously I aren't your final speaker. So I'm going to go and sit back down. But before I go, can I just mention my charities? Right. I would just like to mention that if you've noticed on the cloakroom, we've had charities running the cloakroom over the last couple of days at conference. The first one was for Pilgrim Bandits on Friday, and you all gave very generously there. That is sponsored by Mike Hooker, my fellow Yorkshire and North Lincolnshire MEP. But today, it's a private charity called High Hopes. It's in Rotherham, it's run in Rotherham, and it's for disabled and disadvantaged children who go and ride there on a weekend. And please, I'm asking you, would you please give generously, as you always are, to this charity, because these children actually wait all week to go and ride these ponies. And I go there and visit, and the look on their faces is absolutely priceless. So please, thank you for what you've given already, but please, before you leave, still give generously to this very, very worthy charity. Thank you.